My name is Sam. I'm a recovered alcoholic. The day God separated me from alcohol was May 7th of 2019. I graduated a Caron program down here in Florida in August of 2019, and I am speaking tonight on the fifth step of AA. Which states admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. And obviously, if you're familiar with the program, this is following the fourth step, where we've written down a lot, right? We've written down our resentments, we've written down our fears, our sexual harms, and all sorts of inventory. We've taken the stock in trade, as the book says. And really, also as what it says is, this is a fact-finding, and, here we are in the fact-facing part of the job. And, as we begin into action, chapter 6 of the big book, where we talk about the fifth step, it makes very clear, a self-appraisal, a solitary self-appraisal was insufficient, right? Meaning, me writing down everything I put down this fourth step, and I've done it twice in this go-around of recovery. That just doesn't cut it, right? And I think there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. Quite simply, for me, it comes down to the fact that if I look through, my behavior and my resentments and my angers and where I felt wronged and where, I've been fearful, I'm going to see it through the same glasses as the person who behaved that way did, right? There really won't be anything to check that narrative. And what I've come to know in AA, the only real narrative that matters is the one God wants me to have. It's the one God wants to reveal to me. It's the narrative that I am disciplined on this spiritual walk by God. Because that is the only way I say another day recovered from alcohol. And it's very important that we are as thorough and as fearless as we possibly can as we come into this step. For that reason, is we need to cut this stuff out. Something I like to tell my guys when we're doing 4 and on our way to 5 is, don't delay. Don't delay, not for 1 minute. If they get their assignment done early, let's say I gave them first column or second column or third column, I tell them, once you get that done, if it's done before our call time, call me, I'll give you the next assignment. This is not a time where you can rest on your laurels, not for a minute, because my experience was that the more time I had to myself while doing this work, while doing a 4-step and going into 5, the more of this stuff I've dug up, the more this dust, all these particles of my past behaviors, of these resentments, of all this stuff is just floating in my ether, and it's got nowhere to go, right? It's got nowhere to release. And if there's one thing I know for certain, it is impossible for me to release it myself, right? It is only God and God only who can remove these things from me. And until they are removed, right, they're just floating around in me. And I will see them more clearly, and they will make me feel all sorts of ways. I have never seen more drunks start drinking again than when the 4th step is assigned or between the 4th step and the 5th step. It is almost a guarantee. If you delay on this thing, my experience says I'll drink. And if you just read a lot of the language coming into the 5th step is very dire. It's very serious. It's got a lot of gravity to it. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking, right? It's a warning. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods. They invariably got drunk. Another warning, right? Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell, right? They've done everything else right, but this part they held back. They kept things to themselves, and they still drank. It even says they took inventory all right, implying, they were thorough, but they hung on to some of the worst items in stock, right? They still had the claw marks on all of these things so tight their grip so strong on these things that need to be cut out of us that they pulled them back in. They held on to these behaviors. They held on to these preconceived notions of how they've been wronged or the shame they felt from the wrongs they've caused, whichever it might be. And they couldn't let go. They couldn't forgive, and they drank. Right? And here's something that very much applies to me. More than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but he knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it, right? All these character defects, and we touch on it earlier and on page 52 when we look at the developments. All of these things are ways that I try to be okay. I try to control to be okay. And when I continue to create my own narrative, I want to hide. I want to hide behind my mask. I don't want you to get close. And therein lies, I isolate. I treat you as the enemy, and I get nowhere. In fact, I go backwards. I drink yet again because I just cannot face me. I cannot face you. I cannot face God. So when I came into my first fifth step, I had a different view of it than I do now. My first fifth step, I thought the point was so my sponsor could get to know me better, right? I thought this was all about him and I's relationship, that he was going to remember all of these things that I said about me to best serve me as a newcomer in AA and help me navigate the rest of my life, right, through this fifth step. And what I come to know now is that that's not really the point for me, right? The point when I hear fifth steps on this side of it, it's not so I know you better. It's really to serve as a witness between you and God, between my sponsee and between God, that if I am doing it right and I am spiritually fit and I am tapped into that power, God will speak through me, right? God will guide me into saying things that I wouldn't normally say to another fellow, that I would never say to another human being, right? But what I've come to know is that these are God's way of helping others and using me as the tool, right? Like in the third step, build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Build with me. Don't build alongside me. Use me as the drill and literally build with me, right? Use me to screw this nail into the wall. Use me to carry your message in all my affairs. And many times, if not all the time, that's what happens in the fifth step, right? In my first go around, I might have had 50 plus, 65 plus pieces of inventory. And I'm not here to say that go around didn't illuminate anything to me. I certainly saw the beginning of a lot of work ahead, that's for sure. But it wasn't really the way the book asks us to do it, right? I looked at all of these things, but I didn't really have a place for them, right? I wasn't really asked if I was ready to have these things removed from me. I just... And very much you could make the argument I wasn't ready at the time for that, right? I think God put me where he needed me to be, where he wanted me to be, and that includes right in this moment now, right? I've always been in the right place, just at that time I wasn't ready to hear the full message of what he and this program had to offer. And so, thank God, right? Thank God for good sponsorship. Thank God for the ability to be able to see that I was tapped out with one guy and had to go to another. And I did. And the second go around gave me a whole entire impression of not only the steps, but AA as a whole, what it means to be an AA in good standing, what it means to thoroughly work all 12 steps, a writing assignment for each and every one of them, to put everything out there, to hear things I would have never thought I would hear about me. And the first real taste of that was in 5. And I will tell you, my second, fourth step was much shorter, right? We're talking maybe 25 different things total, maybe a little more. And we did a 4-column resentment list. We did a 3-column fear list. like I said earlier, sexual harms inventory. We wrote out some ideals of the man I want to be, right? The kind of relationship I want to be in, what my future partner ideal is. And we got to work, and we sat there for quite a bit on 5. And that's where I really was able to experience the presence of God, right? Because I was directed to things, and things were illuminated for me in my 5th step that I don't have words to describe how profound those moments were. Not to knock therapists. I've been in therapy since I was 6 years old. Not to knock any other, psychological advisor, the clinicians of Caron when I went through the program. Not to knock any of that. But the information I got about myself through my sponsor, about direct patterns of behavior I've exhibited throughout my life that I put down on my 4-step, brought me to a place of clarity that I could not understand I was in, and I was able to truly hear God, perhaps for the first time, right? God has certainly guided me physically, pointed my body in a particular direction, and pushed me into. And there's no way I would have gone through Caron if that wasn't true, right? There's no way I would have darkened the Beacon Square door frame on when I went into the admissions meeting if God hadn't been pushing me, because I just wouldn't have done that, right? There were no consequences great enough to bring me to that place, but there is a way God could do it, because God is all powerful, God is all knowing, and has a power beyond my wildest dreams. So through that, I am able to take that experience and bring it to other men. And for that, I'm infinitely grateful. I've done quite a few 5th steps with other men, right? I think it's somewhere in might be almost at 10 different ones, maybe a little less. And they run long. I've had 5th steps that run so long, I've had to just kind of say, I'm a little saturated here. And if the whole point is that I am giving you my everything so God can come through, I need to be able to focus on that, right? I need to be able to focus on the power that's giving me the words, the intuitive thoughts, the decisions, the guidance to these men. And if I'm a little tapped out, I got to respect that, right? When I've been sitting in the same chair for 3 hours and we've been hacking at some really tough stuff, I got to be able to say, whoa, dude, let's pick this up tomorrow or later today, right? I need to be able to give you my all. I used to not believe that. I used to believe that, we're going to sit here until we get it done and that's final. But really, that diminishes my usefulness to them. And everyone does this differently, right? I've done it both ways. But today I just think it's best and most effective, right? The whole point of this is being effective to God's children and his will for us by just kind of breaking it up a little bit once I get to that point of saturation. I like to call about 3 hours. And, some of the things that have come out of my mouth, right, to help these men are just so amazingly profound that I don't have words that could even come close to the things God have guided me to say to them, right? And to be able to see, the change in their eyes when they hear what God has for them through my mouth is truly a beautiful sight to see. Seeing that click, right? I would imagine therapists get to see it a bunch with their patients, right? But for me, just a drunk, just an alcoholic trying to stay sober another day, like that is quite a moment for me to see, right? It reinvigorates my love and my faith. And so in the book on page 74 and 75, it's really kind of giving us a little bit of a roadmap, a little bit of guidance and direction on the process of the 5th step, most importantly, who it is to hear it. Here in 2025, right, we have AA very much mainstream in society. We have, sponsors at every meeting raising their hands saying, I'll take you on, Billy, come on in. But back then, it wasn't always the case, right? We had a very slim pickings for those who could hear a 5th step. It guides us towards clergy members. It guides us towards even family at times. Now, I highly discourage anyone from, reading a fifth step to a family member today when there are so many sponsors in abundance. But, back then it was kind of like, all right, we got to do what we got to do. I will say today, I'm not religious, but if you are, absolutely, if you feel the push to discuss this with, a priest, any other, a rabbi, any other kind of religious figure in your local faith establishment, do it 100%. But remember, this only works when one drunk is working with another, right? So read it to that priest or that rabbi or whoever, and then certainly seek out an alcoholic who you can read it to as well, right? That's my advice. That's gathered from, experiences of others who I've talked to on this matter. But today, there's so many sponsors. There's, I've heard fifth steps from men who I don't even sponsor, right? There's nothing wrong in it. In the daily maintenance steps, right? 10, 11, and 12, I write a lot of inventory, I read a lot of inventory, and I hear a lot of inventory. So it's just one of those things. But this is our first real taste in it in 5. And it's absolutely a humbling experience. So it says we pocket our pride, we go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. And it's very important that I emphasize there's a lot of stuff on your 4-step. You more likely than not, I certainly did, swore that you would never tell anyone, or I would never tell anyone, that this is going to stay with me to my grave. And in response to that, many sponsors will say, all right, let's start with the deepest, darkest thing first, right? Let's touch on the one thing you swore you weren't going to tell me today. I haven't quite needed to be solicited that advice yet. I've been pretty thorough and pretty open to the best of what God's illuminated to me, or what I was able to hear from God to present to my sponsor. But it's absolutely something to consider, right? Start with the hardest stuff first, right? Start with the shit that you promised, you swore up and down, no one's going to find out about this, I'm going to die with this, and just run out the gate with it, because the rest of your inventory is going to be a cakewalk. And, we pocket our pride, right? That's a very important statement. We kind of set aside what we think about ourselves at that moment, what we think we know. Right. One of the most important prayers in this fellowship is the set-aside prayer. God, please set aside everything I think I know about the big books, the meetings, my disease, AA, and you, God, so that I have an open mind and a new experience with all of these things. God, please help me see the truth and accept it. Because everything we know up until this moment is what we used to know, right? We haven't quite had that spiritual experience yet. We haven't quite had the moment where we put on those fresh pair of glasses. We get to be able to see life differently, that we get to see our peers differently. We, at this point, might have had a couple God winks, as I like to call them, little emphasis, little reminders that we're in the right place or on the right track. I remember profoundly, I was leaving one of my first meetings this go around that I'd been to, and I did not want to go, and I did not like the meeting. I was just pissed off. I mean, my first year and a half in recovery, I was just an angry, wallowing, self-pitying. I was real fun at family dinners, I'll tell you what. I wasn't getting invited out to fellowship, that's for sure. And I just remember being in the sourest mood. And as I was driving home with steam billowing out of my ears in the middle of summer, I got all green lights, right? I got all green lights. Now, didn't stop for one red, there weren't any, and I never got a yellow. All green lights the entire way home, which here in Florida is a very rare occurrence. And in the back of my head, there was this intuitive thought that, God's got me. Now, I haven't really done the steps at that point, right? I was still kind of dipping my toe in the water here. But I was still able to see, okay, Okay. And everyone, I think, has these moments, or they come in different shapes and sizes, right? So, long story short there, just let go of what you think you know as you go into a fifth step, right? It's irrelevant in the grand scheme of it all, and be open to the new experience. Illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Man, it's hard. Where it says earlier, this is a life and death errand. Boy, is that true. I've seen a lot of drunks go back out for holding back or not being thorough. We can see it on our side, on the sponsors and those who have really done the work and, try to stay in the middle of the program. I can at least see it in the eyes when there's someone there and there's more to it, right? And you can't suck it out of them, right? I'm not some man shop vac. I can't go in there and pull it out of you, suck it out of you. But it's hard to see, right? And if some of them have said, hey, down the road, like, I think there's more there. Okay, let's go through it again, right? You can always go through it again. You don't have to pick up a drink to press the reset button. You can always call your sponsor and say, hey, there's more to it. I certainly have. And this is all leading into the fifth step promises. And I will say that, to me, I have this love, this affinity for the fifth step promises. This was my first real profound spiritual experience. And I'll say that after you've read all this inventory to your sponsor and you finally wrapped up, the guidance after that should be go sit alone for an hour, not for 45 minutes, not for 90 minutes, for 60 minutes. Go to your quiet place at home and be quiet and sit still. And I'll get more into those mechanics in a minute, but I will describe to you the spiritual experience I had, which was I was at my sponsor's office. We wrapped up 5 and I drove home. And I hadn't quite read this part yet. He basically just said, read 75 into the end of Into Action. And do that, and that's for the next speaker, right? That's also 6 and 7, but I was able to look the world in the eye, and I can't really describe what that felt like, but I was actually able to look the world with my chin up, unafraid, and I had a level of confidence, not self-confidence in the sense of cockiness, but I truly felt that there was a presence with me that not only understood me, but I understood too. And when I got home from my quiet hour, I read these words and I felt a level of chills and joy that to this day I hold very, very near and dear to my heart. Once we have taken this step with holding nothing, big emphasis there. You can see there's a huge emphasis on thoroughness, on life and death errand, on this fatal step, on, withholding nothing, right? Like, do not hold back. We are delighted. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. That feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. I mean, wow. And although I wasn't walking when I felt this, I was driving. It was profound. And this was my experience, but that was the beginning of a truly remarkable moment in my life, without a shadow of a doubt. So here's more of the mechanics of the fifth step, because it's not just reading to your sponsor, it's a two-parter. Returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we have done. So in this moment, we're going to come home, we're going to find our quiet place, right? Whether it's, our little home office, or, our bed, or, by the pool, or wherever. I highly recommend being in the house, being somewhere you feel safe, right? Like if it's sitting in the shower with the water off, because that's your happy, safe, quiet place, power to you, sit in that shower, right? If it's in the bathroom, like I don't know, everyone's situation is a little different, but find that place you gravitate to in the house. And if you live with people, if you're in halfway, if there are other people there, just calmly ask, hey, I got to do this for an hour, I got to be really quiet, can you just help me, can you just keep it down a little bit? I don't think that's too tall an order to ask for, or however you want to approach it. I went into a very quiet part of my house where I do my meditating and my prayer, and I did what it said, word for word. I carefully reviewed what I had done, right? And by that, it's referring to the fourth step. It's saying, look over every item, right? Look over every piece of writing we've done, line by line, column by column, right? Have we left anything out, right? And we thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. That's a prayer right there. And it's, you just got to experience it. I don't have words for you. Taking this book down from our shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps, right? Carefully reading the first 5 proposals, we ask if we have omitted anything. So that's really important, right? Like, have I left anything out? Am I holding on to anything I need to dispose of at once? Because if we're holding on to stuff and it does not get removed, or we're not willing to have it removed, right? Then it sounds a little harsh, but then what's the point of all of it? Right? If I'm not here to find God or a God of my understanding, what's the point of this? That's the only thing that will help me recover. That's the only thing that will foster my recovery. Right? If I'm not willing to say goodbye to the things that make me want to lie, cheat, steal, harm others for my benefit and your expense, sometimes just for the sport of it, what are we doing here? What am I doing here? Why am I wasting my sponsor's time? Why am I wasting my parents' money if I'm not going to be serious about this stuff? Carefully reading the first 5 rules. Have we omitted anything? And Bill really loved the imagery of arches and construction. I mean, really is as if we're building a building here, right? A tower of our recovery, if you will. For we're building an arch through which we shall walk a free man at last. Is our work solid so far? Are the stones properly in place? Have we skimped on the cement put into the foundation? Have we tried to make mortar without sand? Right? We have to be thorough. Have to. And I'm not going to go too far into the next 2, but my experience was I did them right after this quiet hour. At 6 and 7, bang, bang, right? And we say, and like the 6th step, is a prayer. Okay. Like I had a friend who tells parts of his story that, he was new in AA and, he was basically just BSing his way through the program. And someone would ask him like, hey, what step are you on? Like, oh, I'm on the 6th step. It's taking me a while. He's like, how long? He says, oh, a couple months. Like, it's a prayer, like it really shouldn't take that long, dude. It shouldn't take more than a couple minutes. And it's because he wasn't willing at the time, right? And like literally the first sentence of the 6th step is I am now willing, So it's cool. And something my sponsor said to me that I say to my guys during the quiet hour and as I look through my work and sharing a solid so far is if something comes up, right? If a name comes up, if an instance comes up, if a fear comes up, if a girlfriend of the past comes up, well, I need to call him immediately. And we need to discuss that because God is bringing something to the surface there. God is illuminating something during the spiritual experience saying, hey, here's a freebie, right? Here's a freebie you didn't catch. Get here, let me help you get rid of it, right? So take him up on that. If you get one of those, absolutely do it. And so, yeah, it's a profound program, and it's not for the faint of heart. Don't do what I did and half measure it for the first 2 years essentially of your recovery. As I've said from many podiums and in the halls of Caron these days, it's Caron helped separate me from alcohol along with God's intervention, right? But it was AA that kept me from killing myself when I was sober for a little bit of time, abstinent for a little bit of time, because that's what's going to happen if I rest on my laurels here. It's not the drink that'll kill me; it's my alcoholism, and it can kill me without putting a drop of alcohol in me. And yeah, thank you for listening to me yammer. I hope this made sense to some of y'all, and it was a pleasure to be of service. Thank you for letting me share.